I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you are digging around in the dirt
Okay.
and you uncover this brilliant, completely chaotic piece of art that's just been buried underground for decades.
Right.
It's covered in grime. It's got these really rough edges, maybe a few deep cracks running right through the center of it.
Yeah, not pristine at all.
Exactly, not pristine. But as you dust it off and really look at it, you realize it perfectly captures the anxiety and the absolute visceral tension of the exact moment it was made.
Wow, yeah.
It's not pretty, but it is unapologetically real. And that is exactly the kind of artifact we are unearthing in our deep dive today.
It really is.
We're looking at this brilliant retrospective column published by Monumental Movement Records. It's titled Exploit 4, The Sharp 1970s, drawn by Italian underground Prog.
It is a phenomenal piece of musical archaeology, honestly,
Yeah.
yeah. Because our mission today is to explore the story of Exploit 4, which was this incredibly short-lived, deeply obscure 1970s Italian rock band.
Super obscure.
So obscure. And we are going to look at how their music, which, by the way, was incredibly abrasive and rough around the edges, how it became this legendary time capsule for a truly politically explosive era.
Yeah.
Because to really understand this band and why collectors all over the world still absolutely obsess over them today, we have to look completely past the glitz of mainstream commercial success.
We had to go straight into the grime.
Straight into the grime of the underground, exactly.
And what I love about this is that the story goes way beyond just, the notes they were playing on their instruments.
Oh, absolutely.
This is about history. It's about the strange allure of absolute rarity and finding profound beauty in human imperfection.
Yes.
But to even begin to understand what Exploit sounded like, we have to talk about the pressure cooker that forged them.
We really do.
Because if you think about mainstream progressive rock in the 1970s, you usually think of bands from the UK.
Right, the British Giants.
Yeah, you think of like Wizards, Capes, a 20-minute song about a mythical starship.
Yeah.
It's very escapist.
Highly escapist.
But the reality in Italy at that time was completely different, wasn't it?
Completely different. I mean, you literally cannot overstate the contrast here.
Okay.
The UK progressive rock scene was, as you said, characterized by this grand theatrical escapism. They were leaning heavily into fantasy literature, science fiction concepts, elaborate mythical storytelling.
Right, very Lord of the Rings.
Exactly. But the Italian scene, particularly the underground scene where Exploit operated, was fiercely tethered to reality.
Okay.
And the reality of Italy in the 1970s was terrifyingly intense. It was a period historically known as the Anni di Piombo, or the Years of Lead.
The years of lead. Let's actually visualize that for a second.
Sure.
Because for someone listening, what does the years of lead actually mean for a normal person just walking down the street?
Well, it means you are living in a state of extreme, constant political and social tension.
Wow.
Throughout the late 60s and the 1970s, Italy was marked by these widespread, highly mobilized student and labor movements. And you had severe, often violent clashes between extreme left-wing factions and extreme right-wing factions.
So it wasn't just protests.
No. There was domestic terrorism, there were bombings, there was literal violence in the streets.
That's intense.
It was a general, pervasive atmosphere of social unrest. You never quite knew when a peaceful protest might suddenly turn into a full-blown riot.
Yeah.
So it was a deeply unstable, genuinely frightening time to be living through, let alone trying to write and perform music.
And that completely changes the function of the art itself, doesn't it?
Completely.
If you're living in that environment, music isn't just a fun luxury you put on at a dinner party.
No.
It becomes this necessary social expression. So even when you are listening to these beautiful, sweeping, classical keyboard melodies that Italian progressive rock is famous for.
Right, the classic Italian prog sound.
Yeah, there is this incredibly unsettling air of political instability lingering right behind those notes.
Precisely. You simply cannot divorce the physical sound of Italian progressive rock from the violent environment it was born into.
It's all connected.
The street-level tension was inescapable, and it bled directly into the musical compositions.
Right.
Where a British band might use a really complex musical arrangement to represent, I don't know, a dragon taking flight over a magical kingdom.
Yeah.
An Italian band was using that exact same musical complexity to mirror the anxiety of walking down a street where a riot could break out at any moment.
Man, listening to this, it's almost like If throwing on a UK prog record from this era was like escaping into a Tolkien fantasy novel,
Yeah.
listening to Italian underground prog was like reading the front page of a gritty, intense daily newspaper.
That is exactly how you have to conceptualize the divide.
Wow.
And because the music was so intimately tied to this grassroots, often harsh reality rather than mainstream fantasy, it naturally flourished in local independent spaces.
Which makes total sense.
Yeah.
I mean, if they were writing music that mirrored the anxiety of the streets, they obviously weren't playing in polished, high-end concert halls.
Definitely not.
So where does a band like this even perform? What does that ecosystem actually look like?
The ecosystem was massive, actually, but entirely decentralized.
Decentralized how?
Well, we are talking about thousands of local rock groups operating across various Italian cities.
Thousands.
Thousands. And they were playing at highly politically charged student events. They were playing in left-wing cultural spaces, occupying abandoned buildings, setting up in small community centers.
Okay, so a true grassroots underground scene.
Exactly. A true grassroots underground scene.
I'm trying to picture the logistics here, though.
Yeah.
If you're a band like Exploit in the mid-'70s, playing these intense local shows, and no major commercial record label wants anything to do with you.
Right, because you're too raw, too unpolished.
Exactly. So how do you even get a record made back then?
It was an agonizing physical struggle.
I bet.
The reality of the recording industry at that time was that only a microscopic fraction of these thousands of local bands ever managed to sign with major labels.
So what did the rest of them do?
The vast majority, including Exploit, had to rely entirely on self-production or very tiny independent local labels.
And what does self-production actually entail in, like, 1976?
Right.
Because we aren't talking about recording a track on a laptop in a bedroom and uploading it to the internet for free.
Not at all. It meant the band members had to scrape together whatever layer they had from day jobs or gig money
Yeah.
just to buy a few hours of cheap off-hours studio time.
Like the graveyard shift.
Exactly. They recorded in a rush, usually just playing live in the room.
Wow.
And then came the physical manufacturing.
Which is expensive.
Very. Because they had no corporate distribution network, they would press these records in incredibly tiny batches.
How tiny.
We are talking about runs of maybe 200, 300 copies for the entire country.
Wait, 200 or 300 copies total?
Exactly.
No.
Total.
That is wild.
And the band members would literally pack these vinyl records into the trunks of their cars.
Just driving them around.
Yeah, they would physically drive them to a handful of local independent record shops, or they would just set up a folding table and hand them out to fans at their local shows.
So DIY.
Extremely DIY.
Yeah.
And once those 300 copies were sold or given away, the music was gone.
Just gone.
Gone. There were no digital files, no secondary pressings. You had these bands pouring all of this intense, terrifying social energy into their music,
Yeah.
capturing the exact feeling of their local scene on a random Tuesday night in 1976.
Right.
And then the physical record essentially vanished into the ether.
You know, it's fascinating that their greatest weaknesses back then, the complete lack of commercial distribution, zero marketing money, absolutely no media coverage.
Right.
Those are the exact things that fueled their mythical status decades later.
It is deeply ironic.
Scarcity accidentally created this massive legend. It really did. The very structural hurdles that prevented them from achieving any sort of financial success in the 1970s are exactly what made their records priceless artifacts later on.
Right.
But before we get into their eventual resurrection, we really need to talk about what was actually pressed into those rare pieces of vinyl.
Yes, the music itself.
Because this lack of corporate oversight, combined with that incredibly heavy atmosphere of the local underground we just talked about,
Yeah.
it directly shaped Exploit's sound. They were unpolished by design.
Okay, so let's get into the actual music.
Let's do it.
If I managed to track down one of these 200 mythical records and actually drop the needle on it, what am I actually hearing?
Well, you aren't hearing perfectly engineered pop.
Are they playing these perfect sweeping symphonies?
No, absolutely not. The musical cocktail they created was a wild, almost dangerous mix.
Okay.
They were blending elements of progressive rock, jazz rock, psychedelic textures, very heavy hard rock, and outright avant-garde noise.
Wait, let's pause there. Because words like avant-garde noise can mean a lot of different things to different people.
That's true.
What does that actually feel like to the listener sitting in the room?
It feels confrontational.
Confrontational.
Yes. To understand exploit, we have to contrast them with their much more famous Italian contemporaries.
Okay.
If you look at the giants of Italian prog bands that actually did sign to major labels like Premiata Forneria Marconi, often known as PFM,
Oh, yeah, PF.
or Banco del Mutuo Soccorso, they had a radically different approach.
How so?
PFM was known for this staggering, almost classical technical perfection.
Right.
Every note was exactly where it was supposed to be. Banco was famous for their incredible theatricality, these soaring, dramatic, operatic vocals.
Very polished.
Very. Expelliarmus wasn't trying to do any of that.
So who are they comparable to, if not the big Italian bands?
If you want a comparison, they were much closer to the darker, highly experimental, later periods of UK bands like King Crimson or Henry Cow.
Okay, so much heavier.
Much heavier. They were miles away from the uplifting, symphonic, major chord sounds of a band. Yes,
Right. And the retrospective gets really specific about the traits you hear on the record.
it does.
They mentioned these rough, extremely sharp guitars that felt like they were cutting through the mix.
Yeah, cutting right through.
The rhythm section was described as hard and unyielding.
Right.
And they would execute these sudden jarring shifts from very quiet, atmospheric moments straight into just a wall of abrasive sound.
And that gets to the heart of what makes them so compelling.
How so?
Because what's fascinating here is the juxtaposition.
Okay.
Exploit actually wrote incredibly beautiful traditional melodies.
Really?
Yeah, they had a real ear for beauty. But they refused to present those melodies cleanly.
Why not?
They took those gorgeous passages and deliberately trapped them inside unstable, incredibly tense rhythms and complex time signatures.
Okay, explain the time signature piece to me. How does that add to the tension?
Well, most popular music is written in a very comfortable 4/4 time signature.
Yeah.
It's a predictable 1-2-3-4 rhythm. You can nod your head to it. You can tap your foot. Your brain knows exactly when the next snare drum hit is coming.
Exactly, it's natural.
But Exploit would write rhythms in 5/8 or 7/8 time.
Ooh, wow.
So instead of that comfortable groove, they are intentionally skipping beats, adding odd syncopations, just tripping you up on purpose.
Just constantly throwing you off.
Constantly. It leaves you, the listener, feeling completely off balance.
Yeah.
It was as if the melody itself was physically struggling to survive against the chaotic mathematical backdrop of the music.
But wait, as a listener, that sounds incredibly frustrating.
It can be.
Why would a band sabotage their own beautiful melodies with abrasive noise and jagged rhythms?
Right.
Aren't they just alienating the very audience they're trying to reach in those local clubs?
It might seem like sabotage if you view music purely as entertainment,
Okay.
but remember the context we established earlier.
The years of lead.
Exactly. They weren't trying to soothe their audience. They were trying to reflect them.
Oh, wow.
The roughness, the abrasive textures, the feeling that the song could literally fall apart at any moment that wasn't a failure of musicianship, that was a highly intentional, direct reflection of the society they were living in.
That is wild.
The music felt violently unstable because the world right outside the venue doors was violently unstable.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
It's almost like if a polished mainstream band like PFM is executing this perfectly choreographed, flawless ballet,
Yeah.
Exploiting isn't dancing at all.
No.
They're basically running a sweaty, unpredictable, underground fight club.
I love that. Yes.
They're just swinging. They weren't showing off their technical skills to get a record deal. They were literally translating the raw anxiety of the 1970s directly into sound waves.
That captures their ethos perfectly. They captured an atmosphere of dread and resistance that polished bands simply couldn't access.
So they capture this incredibly specific moment. They become the definitive, uncompromising sound of the mid-70s Italian underground.
Right.
And then they just completely disappear.
Completely.
They vanish. How does a scene with thousands of bands just evaporate?
Because the entire global musical landscape abruptly shifted underneath their feet.
What happened?
The late 1970s saw the rapid, massive rise of punk rock.
Punk. Of course.
And punk was more than just a new genre. It was a total cultural reset.
Yeah, it changed everything.
Punk explicitly and aggressively pushed back against the long, complex, heavily structured music that defined the progressive rock era.
Suddenly, playing a 15-minute song with complex jazz time signatures wasn't just considered out of fashion.
No.
It was viewed as bourgeois, out of touch, and actively hostile to the new musical vanguard.
Exactly. The culture demanded 3 chords, fast tempos, and immediate visceral anger.
But mechanically, how does a new genre instantly kill off a band like Exploit on a street level?
It all comes down to the ecosystem we talked about. Okay. The cultural shift instantly changed the economic reality.
Right.
Those local left-wing cultural spaces and student venues that used to book exploitee for their 15-minute experimental jazz rock epics,
Yeah.
suddenly they only wanted to book punk bands.
So the gigs just...
The venues stopped calling. The incredibly meager funds they had completely dried up.
Wow.
Even the giant stadium-filling progressive rock bands struggled to survive this transition.
So for a small band...
For a tiny, self-funded band operating on a shoestring budget, it was an extinction-level event.
Yeah.
Exploited, like so many others in the Italian local scenes, couldn't adapt and just couldn't afford to keep going.
That is so sad.
They played their last shows, left behind their tiny batch of 300 records, and simply faded into obscurity as the 80s rolled in.
So if they were completely wiped out and forgotten by the end of the 70s, how are we even talking about them right now?
Because of the curators.
The curators.
Yeah, fast forward to the late 1980s and the 1990s. Out of nowhere, there is this massive, passionate, global reevaluation of Italian progressive rock.
Out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. And it wasn't even happening in Italy.
Really?
No, it was exploding among obsessive vinyl record collectors in places like Japan, Germany, France, and the UK.
That is bizarre. So these collectors living thousands of miles away suddenly start digging into the history of these forgotten local scenes.
Yes.
What makes Exploitite the holy grail for these guys? Why are they spending absurd amounts of money to track down a record that originally didn't even sell?
Because Exploit possessed every single feature that drives the rare vinyl market absolutely crazy.
Which are?
Well, the collectors wanted tiny pressings, which we know Exploit had.
Right, 300 copies.
They wanted obscure, strange, cheaply printed album jackets, which Exploit had.
Naturally.
But most importantly, they wanted a total lack of information. They loved the absolute mystery of it.
Oh, I see. They wanted to feel like they had discovered a secret.
Precisely. It was a treasure hunt. I really want to emphasize that to these high-end collectors, Exploit's value wasn't just the audio pressed into the grooves of the plastic.
It was the store.
The value was the narrative.
Right.
It was the story of a band that was born in the intense political heat of the Italian underground, flared up brilliantly for a brief moment, committed this chaotic noise to vinyl, and then disappeared without a trace before the industry could commodify them.
Wow.
That tragic narrative turned a cheap piece of vinyl into a mythical artifact.
But I have to push back on this a little bit.
Go ahead.
Are these global collectors genuinely blown away by the music itself? Or are they just hopelessly romanticizing the tragedy of a short-lived, doomed underground band?
That's a fair question.
Because it sounds like they are paying for a cool story, not necessarily a great album.
That is the essential tension at the heart of any collector culture, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
But the truth is, it is impossible to separate the two. The music on an Exploit record isn't a traditional masterpiece in the sense of flawless studio execution.
Right.
But the story gives the music its profound weight.
I see.
When a collector drops the needle, that unpolished, aggressive, mistake-ridden sound actually validates the narrative of their underground struggle.
Oh, that makes sense.
The collectors aren't just buying a collection of songs. They are buying a tangible, physical piece of a lost, chaotic era.
Which brings us to the most crucial question for you listening to this deep dive right now.
Yeah.
Because it is really easy to hear this story and just write it off as a super niche obsession for a handful of wealthy vinyl nerds in Tokyo or London.
Right.
Why should you care about a poorly recorded Italian band from 50 years ago?
Because of what we consume today.
Explain that.
The retrospective column makes a highly compelling case that Exploit's raw, imperfect approach actually holds a vital mirror up to modern music and modern media.
Okay, let's talk about the modern studio for a second.
Sure.
Today, almost everything we hear on the radio or on streaming platforms has been quantized to a grid.
Heavily quantized.
And for anyone who doesn't spend time in recording studios, what that means is that computers perfectly align every single drum hit to a mathematical grid.
Yep.
The software fixes every tiny human error in timing. It auto-tunes every vocal note, so it's scientifically pitch perfect. It just polishes away every single rough edge.
Exactly. Modern music is often sonically flawless.
Too flawless.
Right. And exploit is the absolute antithesis of that.
Yeah.
Sitting down and listening to exploit today is not a comfortable passive experience.
No.
The recordings themselves are rough, the audio quality isn't pristine, the playing is highly unstable.
Very messy.
But that imperfection is exactly the point.
Right.
When you listen to exploit, you can actually hear human beings physically clashing with their instruments in a room.
Wow.
You hear them playing off each other, pushing and pulling the tempo, making split-second, incredibly risky artistic decisions in real time.
You hear the humanity because you hear the struggle.
Yes, exactly. And that raw, unfiltered human element is timeless.
It really is.
It completely bridges the gap between 1976 and today.
Right.
Because they focus so heavily on creating unsettling atmospheres and raw emotion, rather than adhering to strict genre rules or perfect technique, their music actually resonates heavily with modern underground scenes.
Oh, I can totally see that.
If you listen to modern noise rock, post-punk, or experimental ambient music, you hear Exploit's DNA.
They weren't just a relic of the past. They actually anticipated the future of experimental music.
They proved that prioritizing emotional intensity over technical perfection is a universally recognized artistic language.
It's crazy to think about. Think about your own daily habits and your own playlists right now.
Yeah.
In an era where literally every song we stream, every photo we scroll past, and every video we consume is auto-tuned, color-corrected, filtered, and digitally perfected by algorithms.
Everything is smoothed over.
Everything. Don't you sometimes crave art that sounds like real people making dangerous mistakes together in a room?
I know I do. And that is exactly the very human craving that Exploit satisfies.
Yeah.
If we synthesize this whole incredible journey, Exploit stands as definitive proof that you do not need a massive commercial footprint or millions of adoring fans or a polished, flawless product to leave a lasting legacy.
You just don't.
Their brief, completely chaotic run remains the definitive, unvarnished record of the Italian underground during a time of extreme societal upheaval.
Right.
They captured the absolute truth of their specific moment in time, and that truth was messy, loud, and entirely uncompromising.
And it leaves us with this one lingering thought to ponder long after this audio ends.
Oh, absolutely.
We only know about the chaotic brilliance of Exploit because decades later, passionate collectors meticulously dug through the forgotten dusty crates of the 1970s to find those 300 original copies.
Yeah, they did the work.
So in our current digital age, where millions of perfectly polished, algorithm-friendly tracks are uploaded every single day, only to be instantly buried and forgotten by that same algorithm.
Yeah, the digital landfill.
Exactly. What brilliant, chaotic, messy underground movement is happening right now?
Oh, that's a great question.
What is being buried today, entirely ignored by the mainstream, that will become the absolute obsession of digital archaeologists 50 years from now.
A truly fascinating question to leave on. History is always waiting to be unearthed.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. It is always a joy to learn something deeply specific, beautifully obscure, and surprisingly relevant to how we live today. Catch you next time.